All right. Well, hello, Theories of Counseling. Welcome to week 3 of the course. I hope that you're enjoying the material so far, learning a lot about counseling. Now, what we're going to do this week is in the textbook, you are covering chapters 5 and 6. And in those chapters, you're looking at Adlerian therapy and perspectives in one, and then also existential. There are 2 PowerPoints that are listed there for you in the reading and PowerPoint review section of week 3. And instead of going over each one of them, because those are listed there for you in the book, you have access to the PowerPoint slides to get a good overview. I am going to actually do a comparison between the 2 of them to kind of give you some further understanding of these 2 approaches. A lot of what's happening in psychology, and more specifically what's happening in therapy, is you're learning a variety of different counseling techniques. That's why if you go in and become a licensed therapist, what you're ultimately doing is learning a variety of different therapeutic techniques and perspectives, and then using all of those kind of as ingredients to bake your own cake, as it were, of counseling. So I'm going to help kind of explore this a little bit more, looking at these 2 side by side. Hopefully that's a little bit more helpful than just regurgitating or reiterating or recovering that which is already there right there for you in the book and also in those PowerPoints. So we are going to, like I said, look at these 2 approaches here. Okay, so this is a comparison of these 2 influential schools of psychotherapy. Both of these, Adlerian and existential, really are very holistic and future-oriented, looking at what do you want the future to look like, which is interesting because Adlerian comes from a Freudian perspective. It comes from a Freudian background. And Freud was very much looking to the past, right? Your issues are all from the past. It was your family, your original relationships that you had, that's really the issue. And so Adlerian therapy, just in that sense, is very different because it becomes much more future-oriented. What do you want to be? What do you want to do to change? And this is one of the main breakoffs that Adlerian therapy, that Adler would have had with Freud, just in general. But they diverge, these 2. Speaking now of Adlerian and existential, they both diverge really on the core motivations that drive human behavior. That's where the 2 of these are different, which we'll look at. Adlerian therapy comes from Alfred Adler, who lived until almost the mid-1930s. He's seen as the father of individual psychology. His work was very foundational to it. He believed that our primary drive is to overcome feelings of inferiority, and this is where he would have been seen eye to eye with Freud on many things. His therapy focuses on fostering social interests. Again, you can see that Freudian perspective there because it was about connections, relationships. Freud thought that it was relationships that were our problem, and primarily our family relationships, and he has all sorts of theories and therapies about that. If you study Freud, you know what I'm talking about. But Adler saw that it was our social relationships that really had a lot to do with who we want to be. That's the future orientation of it. So a sense of belonging is the key to psychological health. Knowing where we fit in the social hierarchy and being comfortable and consistent with our ideals was what makes for psychological harmony, according to Adler. On the other side, existential therapy really is a variety of individuals. Adlerian therapy comes from one man, Alfred Adler. Existential therapy, some of the key figures, Kierkegaard was really influential in it. Key theorists like Viktor Frankl, if you've never read Man's Search for Meaning and his experience in the Holocaust, it is a very phenomenal, very powerful book, and you'll see why he is a big proponent of this existential therapy. Rollo May, Irvin Yalom, some other key individuals. But instead of social interest, existential therapy focuses on confronting life's ultimate concerns. So again, these existential questions: who am I? Who was I meant to be? What is life? What happens when I die? Am I living out my true ideals? These are the types of questions of existential therapy. So things like death, freedom, and the search for meaning. Again, emphasizing Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. If you've never read it, very, very powerful book, and really will give a lot of insight into this like existential sort of idea about life and why it's so powerful. So looking side by side, what is the core human motivation? Adlerian therapy would say the striving for superiority or perfection to overcome universal feelings of inferiority. So we have lots of chips on our shoulder. Those would come from social relationships. This is where he would side with Freud. But the main drive isn't so much the damage that was done in the past. It was more the desire for significance and belonging in the broader scope. So that's where you can kind of see the similarities with existential. It's looking for our place, right? What is our place in this world? And am I the person who I need to be? But it's in the confines of the social setting, right? Because a lot of it is comparative. As I look at my peers, am I where I want to be amongst my peers? Am I too far down? Am I too high up to where I feel uncomfortable with maybe the level of social responsibility? You know, some movie stars feel very uncomfortable with the amount of fame that they have, and sometimes the amount of fortune. They feel like this isn't who they are. Some feel like it's not enough, right? And this has a lot to do with their internal drive, according to specifically Adler. On the other end, existential therapy is, as we said, confronts those ultimate concerns or existential givens of life, death, freedom, isolation, and meaninglessness. The main drive is the will to meaning. Life must have meaning. If it doesn't, it will be meaningless, and we will struggle deeply, and this is where psychological issues will come about. It's ultimately we are not being consistent with what we find to be meaningful, right? Our ideals, our core desires are not really being consistent. So there's a lot of cognitive dissonance with both Adlerian and existential, but specifically on existential, the thing that would lead to psychological abnormalities is the inconsistencies of what our drives and our desires for meaning are in the reality of our life. And when those two are not in harmony, that's where maladaptions can come about. So the view of human nature, what's the view of human nature from each perspective? Adlerian believes that humans are holistic, goal-oriented, and social beings, really emphasizing the social beings there in Adlerian therapy. Behavior is purposeful and directed toward a fictional goal or a lifestyle, and we are fundamentally driven by our social interests. In other words, what does it mean to be successful? Well, that is depends on how you put it in the confines of what you believe, according to your experiences, success is to be. Uncle, whoever, Uncle Rogers, he was very successful, and it looks like this, and so I aspire to be like him. But my cousin Harry, his life was not really successful, and so you have this spectrum in your mind, but they're based off of your social interests. They're based off of the experiences that you have of other individuals. So really, this is very subjective to our own experiences in the hierarchy as we've developed them in both society, but also in our own relationships, sometimes within family and friends and extended friends and family as well. On the other hand, existential therapy views that humans are free and responsible for their choices and actions. We're continually creating essence through our decisions. So there is this idea of social hierarchy and social comparison, like in Adlerian, but it's much more, the words right there, existential than that. It's a lot more beyond that. It doesn't so much look at those relationships. Who cares, that Uncle so-and-so, that he was rich? That's not true success. He was very rich. Maybe he was a doctor or a surgeon, but he was not happy. Therefore, he may have had wealth, but he was not happy, and that's what truly matters, right? So life is not inherently meaningful. We must create it. And just to have the things that one person finds is meaningful, you talk to a person, who maybe is in another religion, who's perhaps a Buddhist monk, and they would look at money as being not very valuable. That they would say that people get lost in having too much desire, and they would not see the true meaning of life and true happiness to be found in that. And a lot of people have said that, right? Like that there's not true happiness is not found in money, it's found in meaning. Money is needed, right? But again, that's very subjective. So we must find the meaning. And some people, it might be in money, but some people, their lives become much more dedicated to things of religious nature. Being, part of a Christian school, we know that to be true. A lot of people who come through a Christian school go on to work for nonprofits and ministry. And the main goal of those things is definitely not money, but meaning is very core to them. So those are the two views on human nature if you looked at them side by side. So what is it that goes wrong? What is the source of maladjustment or abnormality? As I said earlier, Adlerian therapy would say a faulty lifestyle, characterized by a lack of social interest, meaning you do not have your place in your own mind, whether that's conscious or subconscious. It can vary. In the social hierarchy, you are not who you need to be in that social structure. There's also a mistaken belief that one must achieve superiority through socially unhelpful or destructive means. In other words, that's where this becomes kind of existential, because society might define certain things as this is what success looks like. But you might have a different idea, and so that's where Adlerian starts blending in with that existential, saying, yes, it's based on social relationships. Where do I fall on that? So maybe a society defines success, through money, and I'm not making as much money as I should, therefore I'm depressed about that. But really my issue is deeper than that. I think that society's got it wrong, and we focus too much on that, and we need to find other things of value. So you can see how these theories can kind of overlap with one another. But it's primarily driven through this lack, or I guess improper application of a social hierarchy, that we are not who we need to be. Existential is primarily from the avoiding or not authentically confronting the existential givens of life. This can lead to existential anxiety, despair, and a sense of meaninglessness. This is why in existential therapy, lots of questions of what is the meaning of life, and what is death, and what does it mean to truly live? These types of questions are going to be central, because if we do not have good answers for them, this is why existential therapy will often spill over into areas of religion, because what is the meaning of life? Is that a psychological question? That sounds much more like a religious question to me. And oftentimes it does go into the very religious realm. So an existential therapist will often be much more closely of that of a religious guide, not always because of the things they're addressing, but it will be much more difficult as an existential therapist to not go into the area of religion, right? It's going to cross into those boundaries. And that's really true of psychology, because psychology is a soft science that involves things like philosophy, hard science, but also religion as well. And that's exceptionally true when it comes to existential therapy. So what would be the goal? What would be the goal of these two therapeutic approaches? Adlerian therapy to foster social interest and a sense of belonging, right? Helping you find your place in that social structure, whether it's with family, friends, or just society at large. To correct faulty assumptions like lifestyle patterns, encourage the client to move from self-focus to socially useful contributions. You must find your place and correct your place in society, which in itself, again, is very much an existential goal, but the main issue being there's social maladaptions that have happened with you, whether it's friends, family, or society at large. And to correct those, you must find your place in those three areas to function properly and be whole, I guess you would say. Existential to help clients confront life's anxieties. In other words, you're avoiding the fact that we all will die one day. You haven't found a place for this in your mind. You're not living your true ideals. You haven't self-actualized. Something is holding you back. So it really encourages the client to take responsibility for their actions and to live a more authentic life by finding personal meaning and purpose, even in the midst of suffering. And they would often say that in our sufferings, the reason there's so much suffering is because there is a clash of these existential clashes that are existing there. And we have to discover what those things are revealing about us. So the word existential itself really is very helpful, because that's really what's going on in this therapeutic approach. Where Adlerian, that's named after an individual, so not as helpful other than if we knew more about Alfred Adler, which you can take a history and systems class on psychology and learn more about these specific theorists as well. So what is the role of the therapist when it comes to these two approaches? In Adlerian therapy, the therapist acts as a collaborator, a teacher, a role model, very much a role model. You're kind of almost fatherly, or in a sense motherly too. You're like a parent almost to the individual, to show them, as you are confident, you found your way in the social structure, you are now trying to teach them to do the same thing. The therapist actively interprets the client's private logic. As they're trying to think through these things, they're understanding where your maladaptions are and trying to help you see those as well. Lifestyle, early recollections, and helping promote insight and encouraging change. But role model is probably a really good word there. Teacher is also a very good term there. You're there as the expert. You found your place. You have dealt with these discrepancies, and now you're there to help them deal with theirs. Where on the other end, an existential therapist is a fellow traveler, right? They're a lot more just they're not the professional in front of you to show you the way. They're there alongside of you. The Adlerian therapy, they're standing up in front and you're sitting down to learn from them as they're trying to help you through these things. But an existential therapist is a fellow traveler with you on this journey. They're sharing with you their experience, because yours is going to be very unique to you. It's going to be very unique to you and to your experience. So you're not able to really experience it in the same way as they are. But what you're trying to do is trying to help them understand what it is that's holding them back, and where it is that that they're misunderstanding something or they're confused on something. You're trying to help them see that. But your way is no better than theirs. You are just simply there to try and help them discover those within themselves. Okay, so relationship self is the core tool, emphasizing a genuine, deep encounter where the therapist shares their own humanity. Okay, and some of the key techniques as we start working towards the end here. Adlerian therapy, early recollections, looking at analyzing early memories, seeing where things have went wrong in your understanding of the social structures. Things as a child are very influential, and so we've got to go back into childhood. You're going to spend a lot of time doing that. Any Freudian technique, there's a lot of going back to childhood and figuring this stuff out, especially in Adlerian. The question being asked, what would be different if you were well, right? This gives this paradoxical intention and encouragement, acting as if you weren't bullied when you were a child, how would you act differently now? So kind of giving a lot of these what if scenarios or as if scenarios, so that the client can understand with more detail how they were so impacted as a child and make those corrections with the help of the therapist. Where the existential therapist is pretty different. There's a lot of Socratic dialogue, right? Helping you come to the conclusion. So a lot of devil's advocate kind of stuff going on, helping you understand and see what it is that is holding you back. You are the professional, right? Adlerian therapy, they are the professional, but in existential therapy, you are the professional, and the therapist is there as your guide to try and help you understand these deep truths within yourself. Phenomenology, exploring subjective experiences, just looking and analyzing at your life together, focusing on here and now to confront responsibility. What do you need to do differently? What's holding you back? Why is it that you hate this job so much, right? It's not consistent with your ideals. Who are you truly? What is it that will bring you happiness? What do you need to do? So there's a lot of life coaching. There's a lot of life coaches out there that take a very existential approach because they're trying to grow you into what is, in a sense, your true and idealized, and I would use the term self-actualized self. And so as we reflect on both of them, some shared commonalities, despite their differences, both approaches share a rejection of classical psychoanalysis, though both of them do have roots in Freudian backgrounds, but they value these core tenets. One, holism. Both view the person as a unified and indivisible whole, not a collection of parts or drives like Freud did. Both very much focus on freedom and responsibility. Both emphasize the client's capacity for self-awareness, choice, and personal responsibility. Teleology, meaning goal orientation, both are future-oriented. Freud is very much stuck in the past. These say, okay, this will help us understand here now, but what does this look like moving forward? How is this going to change our future? So there's a lot of focus on the client's goals, purpose, and aspirations. And then the therapeutic relationship, we've talked about that. Both value a collaborative, egalitarian, and respectful relationship between client and counselor, though Adlerian therapists are going to take much more of a role of the professional than an existential therapist. Nonetheless, both are very collaborative in how they go about doing that. So I hope that's helpful. If you would like to email me with any questions specifically about this, be glad to answer that. Hopefully that gives some insight, but you've got plenty of material this week to give more insight to that. Chapters 5 and 6, review those PowerPoint slides that are going to give more clarity. You've got the videos, one on existential therapy with Yalom, and then another one on Adlerian therapy with John Carlson. So enjoy the material this week, and make sure you post your discussion board and you have your next exam, and let me know if you need anything. I'll see you all next week.